Is this fun or what?
All right. I'm going to start off with Sister Pat. Can you just tell us a little bit about your life?
I started out as a child. I was born in Ohio, lived there most of my, well, no, not really most of my life. Lived there until I was 25. I entered the convent when I was 20.
Ooh.
And once I entered the convent, I went all over the place. I have taught in New York, Connecticut, Ohio, New Jersey. And then when I got out of teaching, I worked in Indiana. Is that good? Okay. And then I got a job which allowed me to travel a lot. So I have been to all but 4 of the 50 United States.
Oh my goodness.
I have been to Nigeria, I have been to South Africa, and I've been to Ireland. So all of that was pretty much in ministry, which is my life. I am a Dominican Sister of Peace. Have been for 45 years. I know. And pretty much all my life I worked with people under the age of 20 and over the age of 5. And that was all good.
Gotcha. I have a follow-up question. Has New Orleans been your favorite place?
I have to admit that I really think I have a love affair with New Orleans. I could go on for a long time, but there is something about this city. Like I've been to New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Miami, Indianapolis, and they all have something to offer. And you know, God knows New York's a melting pot, and the culture of New Orleans is something you're just not going to find anywhere else. And every city can say that, I know. There is an attitude about church here that you don't find anywhere else. There is an attitude about food here that you don't find anywhere else. And there's an attitude about diversity that's a little hard to wrap your head around, but it's big. It's really big because in its earliest days, New Orleans would not have been considered a really, 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 really bad racist city because everybody was all in it together. And in some historical accounts, the people who came here and settled in the very beginning were criminals and prostitutes and derelicts themselves. There was a law in France, if you couldn't get a job after 30 days, you got shipped to New Orleans. You're done. That's it. We don't want you here. And so they got here and they really had to work hard and make a go of it. So there's something about New Orleans. Don't know what it is. And other than the heat and humidity, I pretty much love it.
I have a question that kind of connects to that as well. So you mentioned you've done ministry in basically all over the world at this point. So what has the ministry been like for you here in New Orleans specifically?
I think I probably have brought together all the things that I ever did. Most of the time, I would say the bench or the umbrella ministry was education, whether it was children's education or adult education. Even in working at the University of Notre Dame, I was working with students. And I lived with them, but the opportunities to teach were huge. And they weren't just classroom teaching. They were life lessons. They were, how to deal with alcohol and drugs and sex and the whole 9 yards. So now that I'm down here, I'm working with the kids in the after school. I'm connecting with you folks from Xavier, both the guys and the girls. We've got girls coming on Friday now, so that's kind of cool. And I'm connecting with the adults. So that it's like everything I've done in these 45 years is all wrapped up. And I'm able to pull on all my experiences and
So saying to me, well, you were a teacher, weren't you? I'm like, yeah. And then I dropped the bomb and say I was a principal. Oh, how did you a principal? Oh yeah. So they just roll their eyes and go, yeah, okay.
We should have known. So yeah, that's what I do here.
That is awesome. Another question I have is tell me a little bit how you got involved with, or the history as well of the Peace Center itself.
Okay, 10 years ago, 7 Dominican religious sister congregations came together and formed the Dominican Sisters of Peace.
Yeah.
We have ministries around the country that each one of those congregations founded, and we're still trying to support them and carry on their ministries. Some are colleges, some are high schools like Dominican. And the call came out for wanting to have a continued Dominican presence in New Orleans.
Okay.
And any sisters who are interested in talking about and discerning whether they felt they could come here and start a ministry, specifically an outreach ministry, not another just school or anything like that. So 5 years ago, a group of us came together and we met and we talked. And we talked about what the ministry would look like. We talked about how we would live, where we would live. And 2 things started to happen. We began looking for a site, and there was a committee down here that was sort of doing that. And we also looked at the site relative to could we live there. So they found this place, and the owner was willing to work with us, and the 2 apartments already existed, and he had early on kind of renovated them. This he used as a storage space because he loved to go to estate sales and collect things. So he didn't do too much renovation upstairs, and people were still living there when we got down here, so their lease wasn't up until the end of July when we moved in August. And then he renovated this whole downstairs area, and he really did it kind of according to our instructions. The only things that might have gotten changed were maybe fire law expectations, and his thinking, as a good entrepreneur would, about the future. How could he use this facility down here should the day come we would leave? So he asked if he could make it, so that he could convert it into apartments if it came open. And we were fine with that, and it all just worked out. That's it.
Wonderful.
I know, it's great. Who would have thought?
So, of course, I myself am familiar with a lot of the kids here, but could you expound a little bit about how it's been to work with this population of African American youth over the years?
I have to admit, every now and then, I would find myself saying, what in the world can 3 old white ladies do with these black kids? I mean, growing up, we had 1 black family in my hometown. I didn't have any black kids in school. So you kept wondering, what in the world? How could this be? But the reality is, you learn about the culture. You take what you know, what you need to learn. And one of the things I learned at Notre Dame in working with the diversity clubs there, you just ask questions. You don't presume, you don't assume. You just say, okay, what do we do now? And I won't tell you the name of the child because you know the child. But I've been having some difficulties these last several weeks with this child. And I knew the child was getting upset with me. I knew they were tired of my nagging, but I wouldn't give up. And it was all about homework. And they would, argue, didn't have any, couldn't prove it.
Couldn't prove it.
So I got this kid a notebook, and I put his name on it and said, if lost, return this to, or if found, return this to. And I presented the notebook to him. And I said, did you ever hear the expression, a dog and his bone? And he looked at me and I said, when you give a dog a bone, he'll fight to the death to hold on to that bone. And he looked at me and he said, am I your bone?
Oh, yeah.
And what I've learned is you just gotta be real. You just gotta be real. Am I devastated with everything that's happened in terms of black-white relationships? Yes. But I gotta work with what I got.
Mm-hmm.
And if it comes to a point where I'm demeaning somebody or denying them respect, that's when things have to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say to me, hey, seriously, you can't talk to me like that. You can't deal with me like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be willing to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I kind of went off a little bit on that, but I don't think when the kids come in here, they regard us racially.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's a safe place.
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt.
They keep coming back. If they didn't come back, then I'd know. Even on the worst day, they come back the next day. They know it's safe. They know that they can have fun. They know that we have expectations of them. And you can tell when they have learned them and when they still are growing. But it's just been an awesome experience.
You kind of pointing out about the history. That's something that I didn't even know myself. And it just makes sense when it's like explained that way. And like the place that this center has in this community is so integral to like just success, not just for the kids, but the entire community itself. It's like a light that shines.
Yeah, they tell us that, and we often think we should be doing more, but they know about us, and they tell people about us, and maybe they don't want to come down here, but they tell other people it's a good place to go. So I guess that means something.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.